As we promised, though, right now, we're going to talk with the ACT Party leader, David Seymour, following on from a very interesting discussion with Chris Trotter, in which he agreed with me that the Treaty Principles Bill has now become the focal point for the wider political debate and battle in New Zealand between left and right. It has had vested in it much discussion about freedom of speech and democracy and many wider issues. We are joined now by the ACT Party leader, David Seymour. David, can I ask you, was that your intent, that this would become, and I think it has become in some ways, the defining piece of legislation early on in the life of this coalition government?
Certainly not. I'd much rather be talking about the economy and education and regulation and if necessary, crime. It would be easier if we had a sound constitutional basis so that we could get stuck into those things and actually make the boat go faster, as they say. However, we have inherited a set of constitutional understandings that we are somehow a partnership between races where your place in society depends on your race. Your ability to sit in certain government positions or be consulted or whatever depends on who your ancestors were. And unfortunately, we do need to confront that before we can deal with other issues which will come and go, but cannot be easily resolved if your constitutional assumption is that we're a partnership between races.
Yeah. Have we yet seen the bill as it will be presented to Parliament or not? Because everyone says, oh, look at this is what it says, here's the comparison with the new bits of the bill and what partnership means or what the treaty means. And I really is that the definitive, is that it?
No, what happened last Monday is the Cabinet agreed on two things. Number one, basic policy settings, so what the bill will roughly say.
Yeah.
And two, the timing of getting the bill drafted, introducing it to Parliament, sending it to the Select Committee, having those public submissions, sending it back to Parliament again. It's not clear what will happen once it gets back to Parliament, other than each party will be able to take its own position on the bill once it gets reported back. Okay.
So, for example, the Waitangi Tribunal has not seen the legislation which it's issued, or the proposed legislation, which is it's issued some formal ruling or opinion on.
No, all they could have seen was the ACT Party website and some reports that have gone back and forth between me and the Ministry of Justice.
Wow. Okay, well, sorry, the mainstream media aren't quite reporting it like that, David.
No, and I can understand most people have lives and hobbies and interests and family and things to do, so they may not be following the intricacies of the policy formation, legislative drafting and other type cabinet processes. And all I can say is that people like me do that so that you don't have to. It's not the most interesting stuff, so I can understand people, perhaps even people in journalism, saying, well, if something's appeared, this must be it. But no, what Cabinet's agreed is that the Parliamentary Counsel Office, who are the government's lawyers who do legal drafting of bills before they're introduced to Parliament, the ball is now in their court to do the actual wording.
Yeah. What do you think of the political price or the political attack that you're under? I mean, I saw the Herald amazingly promoting its latest edition with, I think, a Facebook post or an X post that said, "Does God hate David Seymour?" Obviously in response to those so-called church leaders. And that was the headline, mate. Does God hate David Seymour? Did you
I hadn't seen that. That's quite good.
Did you expect this blowback? And has it... And look, I'm sorry, if you were some female Māori politician, I'd be getting stories, I'd be asking you about the gender imbalance and the racism you've suffered online and the death threats. How bad is what you're getting in terms of blowback and abuse?
Look, there's always been two things about me. Number one is I don't mind taking on difficult issues if I think that there is an argument to be made. So you think about euthanasia, you think about firearms, you think about some of the issues that we confronted during COVID. I've always been prepared to take it on, so long as I can look at myself in the mirror and think, no, I'm actually standing up for a principle that is worthwhile here. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I've been reliably found to be very disappointing as a hate figure and a demagogue. In fact, a few years back, some Americans were going to make a movie about the March 15 attacks, and they needed a character to be me, the only guy who voted against the legislation. And they actually wrote me out of the film and created a totally different character who was this kind of extreme religious right military type figure who had all sorts of views that I don't actually have, because the Americans couldn't figure out that the guy who was opposed to the law changes was actually just someone who thought that the law should be made properly and not rushed, and maybe blaming 250,000 people for the crime of one Australian wasn't quite right. So, I don't mind taking this stuff on, and I actually find when it comes down to it, the level of hate and anger is less than people think, because I'm not the demagogue that they want me to be to play that role.
Yeah. Look, the other interesting thing, and I'm glad that I haven't seen the full bill, because I was trying to figure out. So did I miss the memo on that?
Even I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist yet.
We set down quite a long period for consultation and select committee, which gives you, I think, or supporters of this bill, or the idea behind this bill, an awfully long time to maybe nuance it, correct it, really think about it. And under those circumstances, I'm wondering if, eventually New Zealand First or National might look and say, well, we've actually knocked it into quite decent shape. We actually quite like what it does now. It kind of gives it hope, doesn't it?
Well, I think so. I mean, I look at it, one or two things is going to happen. Either those other parties will say, actually, we do think this is worth taking further, despite what we've said in the past. Now, they're pretty adamant they won't do that. I think one of them even went on the record saying we've never been open-minded. I think you should always be open-minded. But let's just say that the critics are right, and they're never going to vote for it. By the time we get to next May, for the first time ever, actually, all of New Zealand will have had an opportunity to have a say on what they think their founding document means, and whether it created a partnership between races or whether it is a compact that gives the same rights and duties to all citizens to self-determine, to have their property, to live as they see fit. And that in itself is a massive, massive step forward from a world where our constitutional arrangements force everyone to live under them, but only some people who claim expertise or have the right view or whatever are allowed to say, and anyone else is not allowed to say. So I think the reason there's been so much blowback is that there's a whole lot of people who journalists ask me all the time, they say, but do you think New Zealanders are ready to have this discussion? I say, yes, they're human beings.
And the fact is we already are, David.
Qualified.
We already are having this discussion because New Zealanders are ready. Yeah.